Okay, good morning again. Hazaku Baruch, thank you for joining us. And Chodesh Tov Umvorach, wishing everyone an amazing month ahead, God willing, of health and happiness and success. Today's class is dedicated for the Refuah Shlema of all of Am Yisrael. And as well, our month that we're in, my friends, is Iyar. Iyar, our rabbis tell us, is an acronym for Ani Hashem Rofe'echa, as we are preparing and getting ourselves ready for the holiday of Shavuot, and we're working on our character. Be'ezat Hashem will be also a merit for the Refuah Shlema of us and all of Am Yisrael. Amen. My friends, this week we have Perashat Tazria and Perashat Metzora, which deals mainly with the Nega Tzaraat, with the leprosy. And at the end of every Shabbat reading, we read a paragraph from the prophets. You know, there was a time in history that the Jewish people were banned from studying Torah. So what did they do instead? They read a creative way. They decided instead to read a story from the prophets in the synagogue, and they tried to find a story that related to that week's reading. So if you can't read the OG Perashah, you would at least read a story from the Navi that would resemble the Perashah. Now eventually the decree was removed, and the Jewish people went back to the original custom of reading the Torah every week, but they also held on to this new custom of also adding on at the end the bit from the Haftarah from the Navi. That's why today, after every Shabbat reading, we read the Haftarah, we read the Navi. That's where this custom originated. Well, this week, although it's Rosh Chodesh and we're going to be reading the special Haftarah for Rosh Chodesh, but on a regular year, Tazria and Metzora would be followed by a story from the prophets that deals with leprosy. Anyone know where in the prophets we have a story of leprosy? So it's a famous Haftarah this week that I would like to read to you. And again, this year we're not going to be reading it. It's Rosh Chodesh tomorrow as well. So we're going to be reading a special Rosh Chodesh Shabbat Haftarah. But the story is, on a usual year, is found in the prophets of Melachim Bet, Kings 2, chapter 6 and 7. It's actually chapter 7, but the story starts back in chapter 6. The Jewish people were sieged by the king of Aram, okay? And the pasuk says, it was very sad actually, Melech Aram, he Vayatzar al Shomron. He puts a siege around the city of Shomron. And there was a very big Ra'av, there was no food, there was a famine, and people, it was so expensive to get food. Rosh Hamor, the head of a donkey, which is a not kosher animal, was shmonim kesef, a lot of money at the time, just to buy a head of a not kosher animal to eat because you were going to die. Okay, and the king of Israel at the time, people came to him and said, "King, give us money, give us food," and he said, "Where are we going to help you from?" So, lady one day she comes to him and she tells him the following case. Vatomer Aisha Azot. She comes to the king. Listen to the story. She says to the king, "Listen, me and my friend, we made a deal. We were starving. You have to realize when people are starving, they're desperate. They'll do whatever they have to live. Unfortunately, the situation was so bad that her and her friend made a deal. She said, today we'll cook your son and we'll eat him to live. And tomorrow we'll cook my son and we'll eat him to live." That's what the lady said to me. So on the first day, we cooked my son and we ate. And then the next day when I went to my friend and said, "Okay, now your turn," she hid her child. She said, "No, I'm not giving him to you. And I'm starving, I'm going to die." When the king heard this, he started ripping his clothing, realizing how bad the situation is. The king, when he saw this, he ripped his clothing, and he blamed who for all of this? He blamed the prophet. He blamed Elisha. He said, this guy Elisha, it's his fault that there's a fast, there's a famine. He's not praying to God hard enough. He's not a real prophet. And if I see him, I'm going to kill him. Well, Elisha is sitting in his home, and he sends a messenger to the king. And he says to the king, "You think it's my fault? Let me tell you this." He says, "Ka'et mahar, tomorrow at this time, se'ah solet beshekel." He tells the king's messenger, at this time tomorrow, you'll be able to find produce for balash, for cheap, for dirt. At this time tomorrow, the famine will be over. But you will not see it. You'll see the food, but you won't be able to eat. Well, this is where our haftarah begins. Famous ve'arba'a anashim. Ve'arba'a anashim, there were 4 men who were Metzoraim. Now the story leaves what's taking place in the city, and now we're changing the camera angle, and we're going now to see what's going on outside of the city. Ve'arba'a anashim hayu Metzoraim petach hashahar. The pasuk says that same day there were 4 lepers who were kicked out of the city. As we know from our parasha, that a leper is quarantined. So here you had 4 quarantined lepers, and they said one to the other, guys, what are we doing here? We're sitting, we're going to die. What's the point? If we go back to this city, there's a famine in the city, we'll die there. If we stay here, we're going to die here. If we go to Aram, to the enemy, there's at least a chance they'll live. Maybe we'll die, but at least we'll live. There's a chance, 1%, 2%, but something. The alternative is staying here and dying from no food, or going back to the city and dying from no food. It's not an option. We might as well go to the enemy. Vayakumu baneshev, they wake up in the morning, they go to Aram, and as they get towards Aram, they realize En Sham Ish. They realize there's nobody there. They walk in to a city filled with food, with drinks, with money. The enemy's not there. Where'd everyone go? And the pasuk tells us where everyone went. Hashem hishmiat mahane Aram kol rechev. Right before God let Aram have this imaginary vision, this illusion that they heard. They imagined that they heard all of these chariots and horses and swords banging, and they started running away, thinking that the Jews rented the Egyptians and the Hittim to be their allies and to get rid of Aram. So the Arameans fled for their lives, not realizing that this was just a fake thing going on in their heads. It was just imaginary. So they left, they fled their entire camp. The siege was over. So walk in these 4 lepers, and they walk in and they see a whole city filled with food and everything. Well, gentlemen, bon appetit, right? As they say in French. They go into a tent, they take some gold, some jewelry, some clothing. They go to another tent, they eat, and all of a sudden, as they're eating and filling their stomachs, they say to each other, Lo chen anachnu osim. Guys, it's not right what we're doing. As we're saying, enjoying, our brothers, the rest of the Jews in Samaria, are all starving. We wait till the morning to tell them, probably won't be any people left. They're all going to die from starvation. Let us go now and tell the king. Well, they went, they go and tell the king, and at first the king didn't believe it. He sends a messenger. He thinks in the beginning that it was a plan of Aram to get them to run after them. So he sends spies. They go out and they realize that there's nobody in the city. The 4 lepers are correct. It's not a tactic that's being employed by Aram to try to ambush the Jews, the Samaria. He sends another one. Finally, he realizes that the famine's over. All of a sudden, they realize that there's food galore. There's food galore, and the people start stampeding the tents of Aram, and they get all the food that they need, and they were able to survive. They were able to survive this siege. And like the Navi told the messenger, you're going to see it and you're not going to eat it. And sure indeed, that's what happened. As he was standing there to protect, to give order to the amount of people that come in, the people didn't listen to him. They ran him over, and unfortunately, he was trampled to death. This is the story of the Arba'a Anashim, of the 4 lepers. Very interesting story. Like all biblical stories, my friends, there are many insights and lessons that we can learn from here. And I want to share with you 3 lessons that we can learn from the story of the 4 lepers. Sometimes, lesson number one, you learn from these 4 lepers that they are stuck. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You don't know where to go. You go left, you're stuck. You go right, you're stuck. You don't know what to do. Sometimes in life, it seems like we don't have an option. There's nowhere to go. All options seem bleak. And what do you do in such a situation? What do? You want to go out, but the more you go out, the more, right, upset you get about your shidduchim and it's not working, and you want to apply, but nobody's hiring. Right? Sometimes it just looks like whatever we do, there's just nowhere to go. And in such a situation, the Torah tells us that, look what these 4 lepers did. The worst thing you could do is to just do nothing, to remain in one place. The 4 lepers, they get up, they move. In life, you got to make a change. You got to do something, anything, but you got to move forward. Yeah? You can think that you're wasting your time, it's not a good, but it doesn't matter. If in your marriage, in your business, right, to do nothing, nothing's going to change. Right? A lot of times we feel like, what's going on in my life? Why is my marriage just on the rocks all the time? My relationship with my kids. And what we expect, we're hopeful and optimistic that things will change, but we're doing nothing about it. We do nothing. We don't reach out for help. We don't speak to a therapist. We don't change our schedule. We don't do anything. We expect to lose weight and everything should stay the same. I want to eat what I'm eating and I want to work out like I'm working out, and I'll expect, my friends, the definition of insanity, according to Einstein, is doing the same thing again and again and expecting different results. So lesson number one is you got to change something. If there's something that you don't like about your life, then you got to switch it up. I know it's hard to switch it up. It's uncomfortable to switch it up. We'd much rather stay with our regimen that we're used to. There's something nice about order, about a schedule. I know this is where I go up, this is where I go up, this is the type of coffee that I have every morning with X amount of sugars. It's exactly what I do. There's something nice about having order. There's much to say about having order in a Jewish schedule. And order is very important. Matter of fact, as Jews, we believe very much in having order, having seder. You wake up, you pray this, you pray the same thing every day. We don't say here, Sunday pray this, Monday pray that. No. Same exact prayer every single day. Consistency. There's something very powerful about being consistent. 100%. Not going to say no. Not going to say no. However, sometimes when we're looking at our day, at our lives, if we're not happy, something's not okay. Something's got to give. You got to do something. Don't stay where you are and expect things to just miraculously change. If you're not happy where you're working, if you're not happy, you got to do something. You got to make a change. Doesn't mean that you have to quit. Doesn't mean you have to go get a new job. Doesn't mean that. But it doesn't mean that you have to change something. You got to change something. If you're not enjoying prayer, it ain't just going to come. You got to do something. What are you going to do about it? Are we trying to enjoy prayer? Are we studying? Are we learning Hebrew to understand, to connect to what we're saying? We got to change. We got to do something. We got to start learning. We got to start spending more time with our spouse. We got to start spending more time with our children. But to do nothing, nothing's going to change. Okay? So although we like familiar patterns, we got to open up to new pathways sometimes. Okay? Create new opportunities. That's lesson number 1. Move. Okay? These 4 lepers, they got up and they moved. They did something about it. Okay? Lesson number 2 is, it's scary to undertake a new project, to ask for help, right? Because we're afraid of the unknown. We don't know, right? Sometimes rejection hurts. And we're afraid if I ask a girl out, I'm afraid if I try a new opportunity in a career, I'm afraid to invest, right? It's scary because getting rejected doesn't feel good. And sometimes, especially if we're sensitive, getting a no, right? Getting a no could feel devastating. And so sometimes, unfortunately, they never, in life, they don't dare to try something new, right? I think we spoke about this in the past, how really in life, if you're always safe, if you're always going to do the sure, guaranteed thing, you're probably not going to succeed very much, right? Succeeding requires taking chances, right? So as an example, the line that they say is that most people in life fail not because they aim too high and miss, but because they aim too low and hit. Okay, one more time. Most people in life fail not because they aim too high and miss, but because they aim too low and hit. Often in life, our bar, our standard, our expectations of ourselves are so low because we know if it's low, I'll hit. So you make for ourselves a low bar. And we hit it, and we feel great about ourselves. We're doing good. And that is very dangerous. Because in life, we always have to push to unknown, to a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit more. It's hard, it's scary. I may fall, but that's part of life. Life is about falling. We were never meant to be perfect. If I'll give you an example, as a rabbi, if I'm comfortable giving a certain type of speech, I enjoy as a speaker, when I started, I'll tell you personally, I liked telling stories. I was very good at telling stories. So my speeches consisted of story after story after story. It was one long story. I figured out in 45 minutes, how could I spend 45 minutes just sharing story after story after story? But there was no content. There was no meat to the speech. There was no practical, okay, and now what? Direction, right? And I had to open myself up and start speaking a little bit not what I'm used to. And it's uncomfortable. And in the beginning, it's taking a step back in order to take two forward. You understand? You could be here, but you'll never climb, you'll never progress, you'll never advance. Sometimes you have to be willing to take a leap, which may mean you'll fall, but eventually you'll be even more successful than you were before. It may mean that in the meantime, I may not be as successful as I was. As an example, if you're at a company and you're not happy, you don't feel independent, you don't feel like you're part of something, you don't feel like you created something, you don't feel like you have your own legacy. You want to be part of something bigger. And you're afraid to quit, you're afraid to leave, because right now you have a steady income. You're making whatever digits, right? And leaving means opening up a new thing, and it may mean 6 months or a year or 2 years of losing that consistent income. It's sometimes easier to just stay where I am, and it's safer. It's safer. If you want to be perfect, my friends, don't ever get married. You'll never get divorced, right? You'll never get into a fight. But in life, that's not living. Living means taking risks. Living means getting vulnerable. Living means maybe getting rejected. Living means being in a marriage that I may get into a fight. But that's part of life. It's ups and downs. Easier is not always better. So part of growth is being able to realize that I need to make mistakes. The truth is, in the Jewish vision, in the Jewish world, we don't ever whitewash our heroes. We never, put Avraham or Yitzchak or Yaakov or Moshe Rabbeinu. We don't put them up on a pedestal and say, hey, these guys were perfect. They never sinned. That's not our religion. We don't whitewash them. They sinned, and we say it very clearly when they sinned. Our heroes were not perfect. Okay, we don't show that they never erred. It's not true. Ask everyone. Avraham sinned, Yitzchak sinned. Matter of fact, according to our tradition, 4 people never sinned. 4. And who are they? Anyone know who are the 4 people that never sinned according to our tradition? Number 1, Amram. Amram, Moshe's father. Number 2, Binyamin, Yaakov's son. Number 3, Yishai, David's father. And number 4, Kilav, David's son. 4 people that never sinned, and my friends, pay attention to this. These are 4 people that are not even our heroes. They're not famous so much. Most people don't really study about Binyamin. They study more about Yaakov, his father, or his brother Yosef. Amram is not the hero, he's not the leader. His son Moshe was the leader. Yishai and Kilav weren't the leaders. They weren't people of significance. The significant people in our history were the ones that were in between, the ones that did make mistakes, the ones that did fall, the ones that did fail. That's part of life. If you want to be a leader, you got to go into uncharted territory. It may mean that you make a mistake, but you own that mistake and you move forward. You learn, you pick up. You see, the lepers, they thought there would be an entire army waiting for them. And what happened? They moved in and they realized there was nobody there. You see, sometimes we're paranoid about going to somewhere, right? It's a new place. But you know what? A lot of the paranoia is really up here. In reality, there's nothing wrong. You know, a kid in school, think about a kid in school. You tell him, go make friends. He's like, no, I'm afraid. You're on a Pesach program. You say, go join, go play football with those boys. No, they're not going to play with me. They're not going to pick me. They're not going to accept me. And the truth is, the kid ends up, finally, at the end, after begging him, 3 days into the trip, he musters up the courage. He goes over, he says, hi, my name is so-and-so. Could I play with you guys football? Could I join you in basketball? And they say, sure. He's like, really? That was easy. I thought it was going to be like a whole machloket and fight, and I had to beg and get the parents. It was that simple? You guys are happy to let me play with you? Yeah, sure, come on in. Why not? We need another person. Oh, wow. I wish I knew that 5 days ago. I would have joined you from the beginning of the trip, right? So many times in life, we're afraid of getting rejected, and there's really nothing to fear, right? Sometimes there is, but sometimes there's not. You ask a girl out. After weeks and weeks, you muster up the strength. You go over, hey, you want to go out? And she says, sure. And we're taking it like, what? Really? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was easy, right? That was easy. Staples. Sometimes that was easy. Doesn't always have to be complicated. You know, there's a person that you want to ask him if he's looking to hire somebody. You know, someone once came to me. He said, you know, Rabbi, I need a job. Could you help me out? I said, okay, let me see. I don't know. He's like, yeah, it's very hard over here. People don't really hire anymore. Went to shul, met one guy. First guy I met. Said, hey, someone came over to me, he's looking for a job. You looking for employees? He's like, actually, yes. I'm looking for an employee. I put him together, I made the connection. Now the guy's working for him for 10 years already. Simple. Sometimes you can't be worried about what everyone's going to do, what everyone's going to say. Right? Here are the lepers, and they're worried if we go, they're going to kill us, they're going to hate us, we're going to be opposition. And they moved ahead, and they realized there was no opposition. In life, you can't always worry. You can't always worry. Sometimes in life, you just got to do what the right thing is. You just got to move, you got to march forward. You can't calculate what everyone's going to do, what everyone's going to say. You know what's the right thing, and you got to do it. You got to do it. In life, you can't live your life but worried about what the other side is going to say, what other people are going to say. Or else you will have never lived your life. If you're always going to live because of how people will talk about you, then you will have never really lived your life. And Hillel says, Im en ani li, mi li. If I'm not going to be me, who's going to be me? Who's going to be you if you're not going to live the way you want to? Rav Gershon of Zlabin once said the following beautiful line. He says, the difference between a 20, 40, and 60-year-old is that a 20-year-old is self-conscious about his place in the world. He is concerned to make a good impression. He wants to be perceived as an amazing person, and he's very sensitive to how people view him. The 40-year-old says, I don't care what people think of me. I don't care of other people, and I couldn't care less how they look at me. I'm true to who I am. You like me, good. You don't like me, also good. The 60-year-old realizes that no one was ever looking at him to begin with. You understand? The saddest thing is when people go through life and they don't ever live their life. Yeah, they ask people in a hospice, what's your biggest regret? And for many people it was not living the life that I wanted to live. You know, I made choices in life, I made decisions because of certain people. And then I realized that those people weren't even there for me. Those people didn't even matter at the end. And they weren't things that I wanted to do, but I did them because that's what other people told me. That's what I thought was popular or cool or trendy. In life, don't worry about other people. There will always be naysayers. There will always be people that will criticize you. And guess what? The ones that love you will have your back no matter what, and the ones that don't, won't. And, you know, it's okay. It's okay. You can't please everybody. You can't please everybody. So in life, we have to first be able to say to myself, what do I want to do? What do I believe deep down is the right thing? What are my values? What do I hold is the correct approach, the correct way to live? If I'm ready, sometimes in life you're ready to start doing something. You're ready to start keeping certain halakha. But, I don't know, my mom, my my dad. And by the way, you could be 50 or 60 or 70 and still thinking my mom and my dad, right? You don't have to be 20. Everyone has, or what are my kids gonna think? Or what are my friends gonna think? They're gonna start calling me religious. They're gonna start calling me. But my friends, a part of being a leader in the world, in our world, is going the right way. A leader knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. Right? Sometimes you could be a father, but you're really a follower. You're following what your kids want you to do. If, as a parent, I know the right thing is for my kid right now to go to bed at this time. And he begs me and begs me and begs me, but I know it's the wrong thing to give in. But I want to be a cool father. I want him to like me. So I say, you know what? Go, do it as you wish, son. That's a failure. That's not a real father. A real father knows how to say no. And it may be uncomfortable. But a real father is not looking for the approval of his child. Yes, we have to, of course, always calculate, and maybe there are exceptions. But ultimately to know that in life, there are sometimes things that I will need to do that will not please everybody. And it's okay. It's okay. And the bigger of a position you have, the more consequential your actions are. If you're the boss of a company, sometimes you're going to make a decision that's not going to please everyone. If you're the president of the United States, you're going to make a decision that's not going to please everyone. The bigger you are, there's always going to be people that are upset, but you can't walk around, right, just leading the way the polls are indicating, because you're not really a leader. A real leader knows what the country needs. A real leader knows what the family needs. A real leader knows what they need, not what people want, right? So this is lesson number 2. And finally, there is an amazing lesson. You know, we read about leprosy, and we think that leprosy was, ancient and doesn't apply. And the leper was often, like we said, he was an outcast. He was quarantined. And they were isolated and rejected. Listen to what Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson writes over here. And often, the Metzora, although he was quarantined, the Torah dedicates 2 full parashiyot to this paragraph. And it was something rare, by the way. Leprosy is not something that happened often. It only applied to walled cities, and it doesn't apply today at all. But the lesson of the 4 lepers is that really each of us has a leper within. Every one of us has a part of us that's a leper. A leper, like the leper in the Torah, he's isolated. There's a part of us that we feel very, very ugly about. There's a part of us that we feel that makes us unworthy. And the message of the story is that sometimes the news of salvation, where does it come from? Who takes us to the promised land? In this story, who is the one that reveals to the people that there is food, that the famine's over? Who tells it to them? It's the leper. Sometimes the best news, sometimes success comes precisely from leprosy, from the negative, from the bad, from the scary. Every one of us has inside a leper deep down. And it's precisely these parts of our personality that we're ashamed of, that if we're able to really open up and be in touch with them, we'll realize that this is actually something that can make me into the most amazing person. Yes, it's true, I'm very sensitive. And I don't like that I'm sensitive, because being sensitive, I always cry. And I try to be macho and put that sensitivity to the side. But the truth is, being sensitive could actually be your greatest asset. Being sensitive could be what makes you into the most remarkable, amazing person. Being sensitive could one day be your strength. Everything in life that we have, it could be something that we're embarrassed and ashamed of, yes. But if we learn to channel it, if we learn to embrace it, if we learn to utilize it, it could be what leads the way to our success. There's a great Disney movie called Inside Out. And, if you don't want a spoiler alert, then you could just pause the video. But ultimately, it's sadness that leads the way back for this girl to success. So we shouldn't be afraid, we shouldn't be embarrassed of those parts of us that are ugly. We should realize that these are temptations and drives that I have. And yes, I shouldn't give in to every drive, but I need to learn how to incorporate this drive. I should learn to incorporate what looks like to me a lack. but actually this could come back and be something that makes me very strong. This could be something that actually builds me up into someone amazing. If I learn how to use this and to channel it the right way, to use what I view, what most people will view and look at as, oh, you're too. But I could use that in a very beautiful way. I could use that in a very powerful way. So these, my friends, are the lessons from the leper, from the 4 lepers in our story. Hashem should bless us to, let's just recap. Number one, remember that if we're stuck in life, if you don't know which way to go, sitting and doing nothing is the worst option. If you're not happy with where you are, you got to get up, you got to go, you got to move. Number 2, sometimes we're afraid of going because of what the results may bring. But guess what? That's a lot of times that's in our head. A lot of the times, rejection, all these things, they're just an illusion. And end up being, you go out, you take chances, and you realize, you know what? That was easy. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's so hard to make peace with this person that I've been fighting with for 5 years. You'd be surprised. Pick up a phone. Call them. You'd be surprised how the conversation will go. In our head, there are all these illusions of, I'm going to call them and they're going to slap the phone on my face and they're going to hang up and they're going to actually record it and they're going to post it on social media, make a mockery and it'll be the laughing stock of the community. Who said? Maybe you pick up the phone and you call and apologize and the person on the other side will melt and they're going to actually cry and apologize back and you'll find a new friend in this world. It doesn't always have to be complicated. Sometimes we're nervous, Rabbi, what do I do? My in-laws, the holiday, and we get all nervous. Did you maybe speak to your mom and ask her if it's okay? No, I didn't. Why not? Just ask. Maybe she'll be okay with it. No, she won't. How do you know? I know. You don't know. You don't know. Sometimes the answer that looks so difficult, impossible, is going to be the actual, what ends up happening. So number two, you don't know. And at the end of the day, we got to live the way that we know we need to live. Don't worry about what people will say. There'll always be haters. Haters will be haters. And finally, when there's things that are in life that we're embarrassed of, parts of us that are ugly, we need to realize that we shouldn't disregard that part of us. We shouldn't throw it away. The Yetzer Hara is not something that we ever throw away. The Gemara says that if the Yetzer Hara is grabbing you, you got to take him to the Bet HaMidrash. What does that mean, take him to the Bet HaMidrash? Take him to the study hall. It means that this Yetzer Hara that you have, this evil urge that you have, is something that you shouldn't get rid of it. That's not an urge to throw away. That urge is an engine. That's a good engine. Use that engine. It's a battery. It's power. Use it. But use it in the Bet Midrash. Use it for Torah. Use it for mitzvot. Use it for chesed. Use it to do good in the world. That drive, that passion that you have, channel it the right way. And so sometimes in the weirdest of ways, we look at our success and it comes from that one black area in our past. We realize, wow, I can't believe this is where my success came from. This is where the salvation came from. The salvation in our story comes from 4 lepers. Really, leprosy could bring the most amazing? Yeah. Leprosy could sometimes breed success if we know how to channel them the right way. Okay, everybody, wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom, Vurach. We'll stop over here, and we'll see you, God willing, all next week. Bye-bye.